Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kortibada. In this video, we will learn about how to test our query params and parameters in our navigation in our Angular. I have explained about params and query params, how to pass them and how to retrieve them in my previous videos of Angular. I'll provide the link in the description. Please watch that for better understanding. Let me quickly jump into Visual Studio Code. So here if you see we have two components, that is a register component and a login component. And let me go into our routes. So you have something called as app routes, and inside this app routes we have register as a default, and login has one parameter which is a dynamic parameter which we will be passing whenever we are clicking on a certain button or whenever we want to navigate to this URL. And now have register, and if you want to go to register component, what we are trying to do is we are creating a component with two buttons, that is app component with two buttons. One is login and one is register. When the user clicks on login, we are navigating to a login route, and that route contains a ID with 1. And when the user clicks on register, we are passing two parameters, that is query parameters, name and age. So what we will do is we'll try to complete our app component as a first priority, and then we'll go to register and we'll receive this query params and also mandatory parameters of a Angular routing. So let me quickly close this and go to our register spec file and remove this, because there are some certain dependencies which we need to add for our register component. That is nothing but activated route. That is the reason it is getting failed here. Let me save this, and the same way let me go to login.component.spec file, and here let me remove this and save this. Now one is successful. That successful, it is coming from our app component. Let me go to app component.spec file, and here what we want to do is you have the routing file, and for this routing file we need to give with routes. What are our routes? So let me go into app routing, and here we have the routing which need to be exported and should be utilized in our app component. So let me pass this routes here and import it. Let me save this and save this. So now let me go to our app component spec file and create let fixture colon component fixture, which is of app component, and let me use a component instance, and this component instance is of type app component. And once all our dependencies are compiled, what I want to do here, I just want to use our fixture and assign this testbed dot create component of app component. Just assign this instance or creation of a component, and from this fixture what I want to do is just I want to assign component instance is equal to fixture dot instance, that is component instance. Now your component is created. Let me go with first it with a description as navigation to login and register. So I want to test both of this, and we have a callback function. Inside this callback function, let me update my fixture dot detect changes. I want to detect it, and once the detection is done, I want to use fixture dot whenever it is stable, I'll get a promise, and inside this promise let me go and write our logic. So now what is our first logic to execute? When the user clicks on login button, it has to navigate to a location where we will be having login/1. So let's check that. So let me go into app.component.html, and to access this button I'm using an ID where the ID is login underscore ID, and for the register let me create ID is equal to register underscore ID. Let me save this. Now let me access this in our spec file. Let me zoom it a bit, and now let me create let login button, which is of type HTML button element, and this is having fixture dot debug element dot native element dot query selector is of hash login ID. Now you will be getting the element, and when the user gets this element, we need to check our routelet as well. By default it will be going into the register, but what I want to do is I want to check whether I am in the login page or not. For that sake, let me go and go into login component.html. This paragraph should render in our routelet. Let me use login para, save this, and for the first time let me access login page, which is of paragraph element, that means HTML paragraph element. I can get it by using fixture.debugeElement.nativeElement.query selector of, I want to get it as hash, and the ID name is login para. Let me copy this and paste here. Let me save this. Now for the first time, our expectation is the login page should not be visible. Login page dot to be null. It should be null. Let me save this and check. Now it is executed successfully. Now the second case is when the user clicks on login button dot click event, then I have to check whether we have that path in our location or not. For that sake, you can see here inside our app.component.ts, if you go to app.component.ts, there is a dependency that is nothing but your router. So let me add that dependency first. For that sake, what I can do is just go here and the testbed.inject, I want to inject our router service. And also let me create one more thing, that is nothing but a let location variable, and this is of type location, which is coming from common, that is Angular common. Let me go here and inside this let me use this location and let me inject testbed.inject of location. Now that location will be having an instance inside this location, and save this. When the user clicks on this, what should happen? It should call a method in our app.component.ts, that is login method, and then immediately this router should be called. But as we discussed in our previous sessions, router is an asynchronous call. So we have to wait until this navigation is done. For that sake, now I am using something called as fake async, which is a callback function, and I'm wrapping all this callback function inside this function and give semicolon. So let me use here. So I'm wrapping all this callback function inside the fake async so that I can use some methods given by Angular testing, that is nothing but tick method. So whenever you are using a tick method, what it will do is it will wait until our asynchronous call is completed. So for that sake, let me go inside this tick. Then after that navigation is completed, then we have to expect our location. Expect of location dot, there is something called as path, and it is a method, so which will give you dot to equal of, my equivalence will be equal to slash login slash 1. Let me save this and see here, it has been successfully passed. And if you see that object, you are getting 1, that is ID 1, we coming from our login component. So now your expectation has been met, and that means you have been navigated to login. Now what I will do is I'll get it again. After login navigation, I'm getting a paragraph element, HTML paragraph element, that is equivalent to the same ID. But this time this ID should be existing. So for example, let me go here, expect of after login navigation to be not to be null. So not to be null. Let me save this. And now 2 are successfully passed. That means before I am clicking on this login button, I am not having that page. But after clicking login button, I am getting this login page. And in the same way, let me click on one more button, that is nothing but register button, register, and this is also a HTML button element, and this element is equivalent to the same one like login, but the ID will be changed. So let me use this fixture and use the ID as register ID. Let me copy this register ID, paste here. Now you got the register button, and when the register button is there, then you have to get the let register page. Again go to register component.html and just create one ID called as ID is equal to register underscore para. Let me save this and copy this, put it over here like HTML para element is equal to fixture dot debug element dot native element dot query selector of, let me pass this register para. So in the initial stages, whenever it is in the login page, I should not be getting this register page. So let me write one expectation where I should not have register page dot to be null, because I am in the login page. And now I am using register dot click event, and when the click event happens, then what is our expectation? Expect of location dot path, and this time it will have some query params. So it should be equal to slash register and then question mark. Then I should have a name property which is equal to Sai, and let me go to app.component.ts, and I should have age of 27. Let me use age 27 inside this, and instead of colon I can use equal to and just give save. Now what happened? It is throwing an error like navigation to login and register failed. Why it failed? Let's check that. Okay, so now if you see here, after clicking we are not waiting for that. So let me use a tick so that it will wait until it navigates to the next page, and if you see, all has been successfully passed. Why it didn't shown before tick? Why? Because we are using register.click, and that click contains a navigate method which is an asynchronous call. So that asynchronous call may execute at any point of time. By using this tick, we are waiting until that execution is completed, and then it starts executing the remaining state. Once it reaches the register page, now I should have this particular element on my DOM. So let me use after register navigation, I should have this value. So what is my expectation here? Expect of after register navigation, I should have this. So not to be null. It should not be null. Let me save this, and now it has been passed successfully. That means just we are doing simple thing. Just we are clicking, we are waiting for it, and we are checking the path, and also we are checking the page whether any of the element which exist in that page are present or not. If it present, then you are having that router outlet on your DOM. So that is about your login and register checks which we completed in our app component. But at the same time, whatever we are passing from here, it has to be received in our respective components. For that sake, let me go into login component and let's check our original parameters which we are triggering. So let me go into login spec file, and here also we have login component which is registered, but we need some more things, something like imports, and this import should have routing as well. So what is our routing? Route testing module with routes of, I need to have all the routes which need to be known for this module. So here the routes is this one, and let me save this. Now you have the fixture and also the component, and they have been created. This is because we have created this component by using CLI. Whenever you are doing with CLI, itself will create all these properties, and now it has the dependencies. What are the dependencies? Let me go into login.component.ts, and it has one dependency, that is nothing but your activated route. So let me go here, and now let me add that activated route. So for that sake, let me create activated route which is of type activated route. Now from this activated route, we need to receive some data. For that sake, what I can do is I'll create one providers, and inside this providers, let me create a object, and I'll use something called as provide, and this provide will have our activated route, and it will use a value. I can use something called as use value, and this value is an type of object. So inside this activated route, I want to trigger params. So let me copy this params, and this params is again a type of method. That means subscribe is a method. So we have to use on top of it. For that sake, I will use jasmine dot create spy of, I need to give a name and my params, and the function name is something like subscribe. Let me copy this subscribe and put it over here. So let me create a jasmine dot create spy object, and inside this object the parameter is params, and I want to create a method name. That method name is subscribe. Let me copy this and put it over here. This will be my params. So now this activated route will not use its own parameters. Instead, we will be using this mock parameters. So it has the capability to use this mock params. And now let me inject this activated route. Activated route is equal to testbed dot inject of activated route. So I have injected the activated route. At the same time, we want routing. So let me inject that router as well. Let router colon router, and let me inject that. So here what I'll do is I'll assign my router value with testbed dot inject of my router class. Now I have been created my component. Let's check whether all the dependencies exist or not. Let me save this, and if you see here, it has been passed successfully. If any dependency is missing, this component will never create and it will not be equal to truth. So now let me go into one more test case where we will be checking our login param value, and let me use a callback function. In the callback function, what I want to do is I want to subscribe to some certain value. For example, I want to use activated route dot params dot subscribe. I want to subscribe to this, but will not have original values. For that sake, I'll use as jasmine dot spy object. So I'm just creating a spy for this, and let me use this as a spy. So spy is nothing but your spy object. I have explained about the spy and spy on in the previous videos in the starting of unit testing, where this will be creating a mock functions, and this mock function, whenever it is called, I want to return this a call fake. That means it will call and it will return you a fake callback function. Let me use a callback function, and for this callback function I can pass any value. Callback of, I want to pass an ID for this to get that response. So for that sake, let me use ID, because login is a URL which requests ID for that. So let me use a to ID. So whenever there is a route action triggered, then automatically this callback will be called and you will be getting an ID with the 2. And now let me save this, and then I'll use a tick function, because this call fake will internally calls the activated route and it will trigger the subscription, but the subscription is again asynchronous. So for that sake, I need to use tick. But whenever you are using a tick, your parent function should have fake async, and that should be ended here. So now I am using tick function, and whenever you want to subscribe to this, that means activated route dot params dot subscribe, that will be giving a response, and that response will be equivalent to the response which is passed from here. So for that sake, let me use an expectation where response dot id, because the callback is sending an id, dot equal of, let me format this and save here. So now the subscription will be called with an id of 2, and you are getting that expected value. If you see this login component, even it is also doing the same stuff. That means we have successfully passed our activated route logic. And now let me save this. In the same way, we need to check our query params for our register component. Let me go to register.component.spec, and inside this already the fixture is created. Just what we need to do is we need to import our dependencies, that is nothing but router testing module with routes of our routes. So let me use our routes, and also we need some providers, which is nothing but activated route. And in this case, if you go to register component.ts, it is pointing to query params, not the params. So we have to mock query params. For that sake, let me use a provide property, which is having a control on activated route, and it will be using a value whatever I am providing. It will not use its own value, instead it will use this particular values. So for that sake, let me use query params, or if you have any problem with the spellings, just copy this and paste here. Again, this is using one subscribe, but to use this subscribe we need to mock that subscribe. For that sake, what I can do is I'll use jasmine dot create a spy object, and the base name is query params, and the methods which uses this query params is subscribe. And save this. Let me go and create one instance for our activated route. Activated route, which is of type activated route, and let me inject this activated route. Activated route is equal to testbed dot inject of activated route. So I have the access to query params, and now I have been injected it. So let me uncomment this and save this. If you see here, it has been passed. That means our configurations are perfectly all right. Now let me use it statement with a description register query params check. So now I want to check this query params, and again these query params are using a subscription, and the subscription is an asynchronous call. For that sake, I'll use fake async and end up here. So now let me use our activated route which is using a query parameters, and this query parameters will use a subscribe, and the subscribe is a method. So we have to create a spy object by using jasmine.spy. So whenever I'm trying to create a spy object, I'm using as, that means alias. So type conversion, I'm doing this subscription as a type conversion into spy object, and I want to call it as a fake call, and I want to pass some set of values. For example, I want to pass name as Sai. We're getting a callback function. For this callback function, I want to pass in object, and there the object is Sai, comma age is 27. So whenever something is passed in this query params, that will be received by our register component, and this is an asynchronous call. I'm using a tick, so it will wait until that asynchronous call is completed, and then I'll write my expectation as activated route dot query params dot subscribe, and whenever I subscribe, you'll get a result, and inside this result, let me use expect of result dot name to dot to equal of, I can have Sai, and now let me use expect of response dot age dot to equal of 27, and let me save this. If you see here, all 6 are passed. That means we have tested our activated routes at the individual components, and also we have tested our app component by navigating one place to another place. We have covered all the scenarios which are required for the navigation, query params and params. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.